All right, everyone, welcome to the next Taskforce webinar. Very exciting to have you all here. We're just going to give it just a couple more minutes, maybe about another 30 seconds to a minute, and we'll make sure that everyone has joined us, and then we'll kick off with today's webinar. Can't see video. All right, everyone, we're going to get kicked off in just a moment. And now, unfortunately, we don't have any video at the moment. For some reason, that's not working in today's one, but that's all right. You don't need to see my ugly face anyway. The main thing is that you can hear me today and you can see our slides. So thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to go through something that's a bit more of a discussion topic today, and something that we're seeing as an area where we're seeing a lot of improvements recently, especially from agencies. So what I'm going to share to you today is some of the things that we see that show the best way, or some of the best ways, just to give you a few tips and tricks to manage the safety checks in your rent roll. So to make sure that your whole rent roll is compliant, we're going to share some tips around what the best practices are in this. Now, it's certainly not an extensive list. It's not a one scenario fits for all. What we're trying to do here is just give you a few tips that you can integrate into your current processes, maybe a couple of processes that you can update internally, or a few things that you can have switched on that might help you out a little bit better. And this is regardless of whether you're using Taskforce or you're using multiple providers or other providers. Hopefully today you'll get a few good little tips out of it. So let's get straight into it. So there's my face. Sorry you can't see me today. Like I said, we're having a few camera issues for some reason. The exact same setup we've used every other time, but that seems like each time we have something else thrown up to us. So my name's Ashley. I do a lot of the training and product development here at Taskforce. I was previously one of our account managers. And we're going to do a lot more in this webinar series, and I'm really looking forward to expanding it over 2026. So the things we'll cover today, as I've just said, we're going to try and give you a clearer understanding of some of the main things that we see come up with compliance obligations that aren't currently being met. We're going to give you a couple of ideas, hopefully, that you can implement to put best practice in your own systems for how you manage the compliance across your rent roll. And we're also going to talk a little bit about landlord communication, and finding ways to reduce risk and admin time. So firstly, and I go right back to the start, and I think this is really, really important to do sometimes with your owners as well, just having a look at where the compliance landscape is. Now, this all came in 2021, but it's consistently been updated over time. They continue to refine it and add a few things in. Now, we're all very aware that smoke alarms are done every year. Electrical safety checks and gas safety checks are done every 2 years. The areas that probably the one area that we see missed a lot at the moment, because it's just not front of mind, is pool barrier compliance. Now, luckily here at Taskforce, we do pool barrier compliance as well. That's required every 4 years. So it's really important if you do have properties within your rent roll that do have a pool barrier, to make sure that you've got tasks set up to look at that every 4 years. And at Taskforce, obviously, we can help you with that as well. And of course, rental minimum standards. Now, this is the hot topic at the moment. We've seen the introduction of the 2027 energy efficient regulations that are going to come in March next year as a rolling rollout, I suppose, to see. And of course, there's a lot more emphasis on getting rental minimum standard checks done now to make sure that your properties are compliant. We've got the Consumer Affairs Task Force out there looking at properties. And what that's meant is that the PM role has somewhat shifted a little bit. We're seeing that it's a lot more now about mitigating the risk and being that gatekeeper of all of the compliance for the owners in the properties. You're becoming a bit more of an owner advisor, but of course we can't forget about the renters either. The whole reason these are in here is to be a safer environment for your renters to live in. So we're going to go into that in a little bit as well. But one thing that I just wanted to start off on today was with new builds. Now, this is an area that we see missed quite a lot when we're doing health checks across an entire rent roll. So a lot of companies have really good processes in place now to manage ongoing safety checks, but they haven't got a good process to manage the new builds. So what I mean by new builds is a property that's just been built and put on the market rather than a property that you've taken over management for. So these new builds obviously come with a certificate of occupancy. Now, that certificate of occupancy is very important to have, and to have that date put into your system straight away. And the reason why is because the safety checks are actually due based on that certificate of occupancy date rather than when you have someone moving into the property. So obviously smoke alarms must be installed and active before someone goes into the property. Now, the rental minimum standards actually have to be met before you're advertising it to rent. Now, a lot of people will say, well, hang on, it's a new build. Why do I need to do a rental minimum standards check on it? It should meet those standards already. Well, not always. What we actually find is that the rules for an owner-occupier house versus rental standards and the minimum rental standards can differ. And sometimes those rental standards are kept to a higher level of scrutiny. So they are based generally on the same regulations, but you can go into your own property and not worry about updating your smoke alarms, even though it is a legal requirement. In the rental property, it has to be done and it has to be documented. So because it has to be documented, you're looking at that in a little bit more scrutiny. So the one thing that we see missed the most is the 12-month check. So with new builds, a lot of people think, yep, it's good for the first 2 years. The certificate of occupancy covers it for the first 2 years. Now that is true for an electrical and gas safety check, but it's not true for the smoke alarms. The smoke alarms actually still have to be checked at that 12-month period after the certificate of occupancy. So even if you've had someone not move in until the 11th month, on that 12th month, you do have to have those smoke alarms checked. So that's just something to be mindful of. Especially for the BDMs in your team, to have that discussion with your owners right from the start and to lay out that timeline so that they're aware of what their obligations will be once it goes on the rental market. All right, now let's talk a little bit about what we currently see. So we're seeing a lot of reactive management of portfolios. What I mean by that is that they're just waiting for something to come up, a task, etc., and they're not looking at areas where there might be little gaps, and that means that many gaps are coming up. We see offices using multiple tracking systems with very limited integration into their systems. So whether you're still doing it on a separate spreadsheet that doesn't integrate with your CRM, or whether you're using your CRM and maybe it doesn't fully integrate with your provider, this creates a lot of kind of time-intensive internal processes, things like manually uploading documents, etc., when you can automate all of that kind of stuff. Now, the market itself, there's obviously a wide range of choices for providers, and each of those providers have different approaches. So when you're looking at different providers to give your owner the best option, you really need to make sure you're looking at it and not and trying to compare apples with apples. Now, what I mean by that is that obviously everyone has a cost for the service. However, the inclusions that come with that particular cost can differ. So what we see on the market is some of the cheaper options out there. They're definitely trying to make some money back in the rectification section, or there are simple inclusions like smoke alarms. When they're getting replaced, you have to pay for them individually. Now that can be quite a good option. It can reduce the upfront cost to your owner, but the downside of that kind of scenario is that you will also then require quite a conversation to be had every time that something needs to be fixed, and the cost is a little bit higher than normal. Once you move up the market a little bit, you'll start to see more inclusions. Like at Taskforce here, we include smoke alarms. So if a smoke alarm needs to be replaced, you'll never have to pay for that. And then, of course, at the top end of the market, you also have a few providers out there that will include remedial works and services ongoing as part of their higher cost. So for you as an agency, it's about looking at what the best solution is for your owners in your area and making sure that you're comparing these different providers on what they actually provide and making sure you understand all of those hidden costs. Let's talk about owners. Now, owners can often slow that decision-making progress up. If you're having a process that you have to go back and ask the owners all the time, that can add quite a little bit of time into it. Especially when the owners have selected to complete the safety checks themselves, whether you're using their own provider or whether they have someone internally that's doing it. Now, when we see this when we're doing health checks, we do find that kind of 1 out of 10 of those owners is great, but the other 9 out of 10 owners creates a real task backlog for your PMs to have to chase them up constantly to get it done. So it's a really good area to try and move away from that. Another thing that we see when we're doing health checks is that only a percentage of the rent roll is compliant. And this is also true for agencies where they feel like they've had a really, really good kind of coverage of it, and they feel like they've done all of their properties and they've done everything internally to try and get to that point. What we find when we do our health checks and we grab all of the data from either your previous provider or if we do an internal health check, if you've been a customer with ours for some time, that goes through and identifies gaps where maybe a smoke alarm has been missed, for instance, where that job hasn't been approved in the previous year, and we can catch up on all of those. It also captures all of those new properties that you've brought on that maybe haven't been done yet because you've kind of thought, well, we don't have to do anything for 2 years. That's a 2-year problem from now, not a problem for now. So it does often get missed compliance cycles. I'll give you a really good example of it. We recently did a health check on a portfolio of just under 500 properties. They felt like they had a very good coverage, and they were very honest. They said we probably covered about 9 out of 10 of these properties. When we went through it, we actually found that there are 140 properties that still required some updates on that particular compliance. A lot of them were just an individual compliance that was missed for various different reasons. And then there was about kind of half of that list, which were new properties that hadn't been done. So making sure you do that health check's a very good idea in that space as well. And what we see often is pool and spa barrier compliance, as I mentioned before, is just not considered. So make sure that becomes part of the conversation that you have, especially with your owners at that time. All right, so let's flip the tables a little bit and talk about practices that we see agencies doing that we feel can maybe potentially help you. So hopefully this is the area where you get just 1 or 2 little tips and just take what works for you. Like I said before, it's different for everybody. It's different for every agency. So if you can take 1 or 2 things here from this page and implement them, you'll definitely be in a better space than where you were before you started this. So the first one we see is we still see a lot of owner instruction forms where it calls out a particular provider and a particular price. Now, the issue with that, obviously, is that when that price changes for any reason, or the service level, say, increases, or you go to a different provider because you look for a better return on investment, it means that your owner instruction forms can sometimes be out of date. What we see the best practice out there is that you just have the option to have the agency approved to manage all of the safety checks for the property. Now, obviously, you're still going to give the option for the owners to do this, but you really want to push them towards your agency managing that. What that allows you to do is make sure that you keep it all in one place, and that if you do need to make changes, all you need to do is just inform the owners of the change that's coming up. And we'll go into that a little bit more in a bit more detail in just a moment. Automated reminders and automating systems. The more that you can automate, the less time that you have to manually do things. I mean, that's pretty obvious. But one of the things that can really help is bundling all of the scheduling of the services. When we take new rent rolls on or a new customer on, we often find that services are still being done across different times in the year. So that creates quite a big impact to your renters. If you think about that, if your renter has your 2 6-monthly inspections every year, they have a smoke alarm come out to be checked, they have a gas plumber come out to do the gas plumbing every second year, and then you have an electrician come in the opposing year, you got 4 or 5 times that they're actually being interrupted in their year, and that's a big impact on renters. If you can schedule all of your services in one, so if you can put your gas, electrical, and smoke alarm checks in one, and even moving the dates a little bit from when they're originally due so that they become on the same date, that has a huge reduction in impact to your renters, but also it can actually save your owners a lot of money, and it can save you admin time. Because when you bundle the services together, pretty much all providers will give you a discount on that, because it's a lot more efficient for us to go out and do multiple checks in one go. One thing that we're seeing is that a lot of agencies are starting to switch to just having one preferred supplier. Now, when these checks first came out, it was very common practice to have 2 or 3 suppliers, and you give your owners the option, and then your owners can pick and choose from what they would prefer and the service level they would prefer. Now, that seemed like a great idea at the time, but the reality of that is it created a lot of admin time for your teams. A team that just uses one provider, it's much less time. You've got everything in one place. You're not having to log into 2 or 3 different portals. You're not having to raise jobs 2 or 3 potential different ways, and you're not chasing up multiple teams. You get to know the provider really well. You get to know the people in that team, and you know where to go to get answers, and it just saves you time in that space. Additionally, if you can set a good process and have great trades that you use regularly for your rectification works, that can also make it a lot easier. You're going to the same person all the time, they get used to your processes, and you can go from there. We have a lot of customers here at Taskforce that will have a set dollar value, whereas if the rectification comes in under a set dollar value, maybe that's $300, they will automatically approve it, and Taskforce will go out and do that work. If it's above that, what they do is they take that quote, the no obligation quote from Taskforce, they'll get their own trade to look at it as well, and then you've got 2 quotes that you can go back to your owner with in a very short time to say, hey, we've got a couple of options here for you. This is what needs to be done. Which one would you like to go with? And of course, they're generally going to go for the cheaper option, which can quite often be your own local trade. And that helps you with that relationship with your own trades as well. Now, this next one's not a be-all and end-all, but what we are seeing is a lot of agencies moving to having an individual compliance manager within their property management team. So one person that's responsible for the entire portfolio and looking at the compliance for that portfolio. Now, this has a lot of really good benefits. Obviously, that one person can focus on that side of things. They can understand the processes and work with the trades and the provider, and then provide the right information, and it takes a little bit of admin off your individual PMs as well. Now, that won't work for everyone. Not everyone has a team that's large enough to do that. So if you don't have the ability to have one compliance manager looking after it all, you can still do a really good job with just having consistent processes across all your PMs. So making sure that, the way simple things, the way things are uploaded is all done the same. The way dates are recorded is all done the same. So making sure you're doing training and putting processes with your entire team so that they're all basically just moving to the same beat. So they're all putting the same information in. Now, being confident about your owner communication, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in another slide as well, but having the right information to be able to talk to your owners about why you're doing this and having the confidence within your team to do that is great. So this is an area where you can really lean on your providers. You can ask for training in particular areas. Get training on rental minimum standards, get training on how we do gas shutoffs and all that. And that's a little bit what this webinar series that we're doing is also about, to try and give you some more information to help educate you so that you can educate your owners and feel more confident with that. And one thing not to forget is, like I mentioned before, just consider the tenant experience. Things like bundling all of your scheduling together, making it easier for them, having a look at the messaging that's going out to your renters to make sure that it's consistent. That kind of thing does make a big difference. So I put a little example on the right there. If you're an office that's automating a lot of your communication, so you're saving time there, you've got a pre-approved authority, so when changes come through, you know that you can just give them an update and just move forward. If you have a single provider and you're bundling the checks, the result will be that you're going to have really consistent compliance cycles. You're going to be putting less effort in from an admin perspective from your PMs. Your owners are going to have more confidence in what you're doing because it's regular and you're getting the same result all the time. And your renters are going to have a better experience as well. And that's what we're trying to achieve, of course, across the PM world at the moment. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of examples, just going into them a little bit more. We won't take too much time on this, but as I mentioned before, on the owner's instruction form, one of the best approaches that I've seen out there to date is just nominating that the agency has a preferred supplier and that you look at that preferred supplier and review that preferred supplier to make sure the owners are getting the best return on investment. Rather than including it in the owner's instruction form, having a separate addendum or a detachment that outlines some of the regulatory requirements and your current provided supplier and their level of pricing and service. If you keep that separate, whenever you need to update that, you can just send through that update rather than having to go through some of your owner instruction forms. Now, if you're managing your portfolio for a long time, that might not be so much of an issue. But if you do get to the instance where you're potentially looking to sell that portfolio, this is an area that gets scrutinized quite a lot by the group that's looking to purchase that portfolio. Because if this information is easy and it's all in check, then you're potentially going to get more for each property that you're managing. And that's what you want if you're looking to sell your rent roll, of course. This is one that I came across quite recently, but I thought it was fantastic. So automating some emails in your system. Now, whenever your system has a compliance date in there, you can set up automatic reminders, and obviously you can use Property Me and Property Tree or any other CRM to automate some messages to go out to different people that are involved. So this particular example was really good. It was about an email to the owner 1 month before their safety check was due, just reminding them that the safety checks were coming up and that the agency would be using their preferred supplier to go out and do that check within the next month. Now, I thought that was a really, really good idea because what it does is it's not, and you'll see my little call out on the right, it's reframing the conversation. So it's not saying, hey, and this actually happened to us to myself and my partner recently. We have a property up in Wangaratta and we received an email saying, hi, we can see that this was done 2 years ago by provider X. Would you like us to go and do it again? Now that resulted in a bit of back and forth. There was probably 4 or 5 emails. As an owner, my partner questioned it and said, are they still the best provider in your area? And we went through a bit of time and process with that property manager to decide yes to go ahead. And obviously our company here at Taskforce ended up doing that particular job. However, if you can reframe that a little bit and say, hey, your legal requirement for safety checks is coming up, we will arrange this to ensure it's done in time with our current provider. You're removing that optional language, and an owner's just going to look at that email and go, yep, cool, no worries. They know it's coming up. When you send them the invoice in the next month or you remove it from the rent, then they're not surprised. They know it was coming up. They know it's coming out. They know they've already agreed with you beforehand, so there's no questions there from the owner, and that's what you're trying to achieve. I'd never thought of this next one, but automating an email to the renter can be really beneficial as well. It just informs them that the provider that you're using, say Taskforce for instance, is going to be in touch over the next month to come out and complete those mandatory safety checks. Now, the reason I thought this one was really, really good is because renters are getting a little bit more cautious around spam. And they're obviously, being cautious, which is great. But if they know that they're going to receive a request to book some time in, when they receive it, what we see is a much higher uptake Now we get a pretty good uptake on the way that we do it anyway, but it just improves that, and it just improves that whole renter experience with you. They know it's coming up. When they see it, they're done, and then you don't have to chase it up as much in the future, which is great. And this one's a little bit optional, but you could also just set a reminder for the property manager to ensure there are no changes or updates required on that property. Now, this can be really handy, for instance, when you have a CRM that it doesn't integrate with your particular provider. So here at Taskforce, we integrate with Property Me and Property Tree, but you might be using, say, Console or someone else that doesn't yet integrate with us. So in this case, you can just have a quick reminder there to go, okay, I actually need to update the tenant details on that property, or potentially you're looking at selling this property relatively soon, so you might actually not need to do the safety checks at this point because it's about to go on the market. Now, our to-do list is a way to automate this task. So if you're receiving the to-do lists from Taskforce, which if you're one of our customers, you'll be getting these pretty much on a weekly basis now, it will come out with that information in it, and you can just look at the tenant details and you know whether you can update it there and then you can approve or decline that job. So that's a reminder that we've set up, but if you didn't have that or you weren't using Taskforce, then that's an option for you as well. Okay, another thing we see, again, just about getting some consistent processes in place. So I'm amazed how often this one is done incorrectly, but recording dates correctly in your CRM to activate the reminders at the right time. I very often go in and we'll do a bit of an audit against some of these processes with our customers. And the electrical and gas is set up for a 2-year reminder, which is great, but the smoke also gets a 2-year reminder. And when we're taking over new rent rolls, this is an area where we see a lot of gaps where that smoke alarm might have been missed. So it's just really important to make sure that if you are putting dates in your CRM, you can automate the reminders for 1 month before they're actually due. So with smoke, 11 months, electrical and gas, 23. And of course, don't forget pool barriers. That has to be done every 4 years. So you're looking at a 48-month reminder for that particular one. And document uploading. The way that you upload the documents, you want to be consistent, have consistent labeling across your team so that if you're searching for them in the future, it's really, really easy to find. Now, if you're with a Property Me or Property Tree, make sure that your provider, including us here at Taskforce, is actually automating the uploads into your CRM. We'll have a little look at how that looks now. So if you're an MRI Property Tree customer, it's just probably one of the better systems and the better integrations that's available to all of the providers at the moment. So on the particular property, you can see that it has that compliance tab, and we can automatically upload in each of the categories, so electrical safety check, gas safety check, and smoke alarms, the report as well as the new expiry date, and it can also set up a reminder for 1 month before that one's due, which is really, really important. The document itself is linked from the right-hand side, so you can just click on that little document icon and it will bring up the report. So you don't have to manually upload the reports if you're using Property Tree. If you are a Property Tree client, have a chat with your account manager here at Taskforce or give our customer care team a call and make sure that we're automating that and putting that in for you. It's similar if you use Property Me, but Property Me doesn't have as integrated an API for all of the providers, unfortunately. So we can't put it into the compliance section of Property Me, which is a little bit frustrating. And we've been requesting this for quite some time. So if you are a Property Me customer, please request it with your Property Me rep. We'd love to be able to do it, as would all of the other providers out there. But at the moment, the only place we're allowed to put it into is the Jobs tab, which you can see on the screen here. Now, there are a few benefits of that. Obviously, you've got those different job assigned levels, whether it's active, quoted, approved, assigned, etc. So we can actually, when you request the job from us or you approve the job from us, it will automatically go in against the property in this jobs list. And it will also update so that you can see within Property Me whether the owner is whether the renter still hasn't responded. When the renter responds and it gets booked in, you can see it move to the assigned tab. And then once we've completed it, it will move through to the finished and then closed tabs once the report is uploaded. Now, in this case, what you would do is you would click on that particular job. And then the next screen would come up and you'd have to go across to the documents on the right-hand side, and that's where the actual document would sit, so the actual report. So you have the ability to upload those reports automatically with both Property Me and Property Tree. Make sure you're taking advantage of that. All right. Let's move on to some of the owner conversations. Now, I'm going to try and pop a quick poll up here just while we get to this. So the poll that I'm going to start is I'm really interested to know what your biggest compliance challenge is right now. So we've got a couple of options there. If you don't see one of the options there, just pop it in the chat on the right-hand side. Just go to the little chat bubble and then pop that in. And we'll just do this quickly and then we'll finish up today's webinar. So owner approvals and delays, yeah, it's definitely one that we see quite often here at Taskforce as well. I'd be interested to know how many of you that use multiple providers feel like that's a challenge or whether you think it's a benefit. Yeah, owner approvals, it looks like the one to go through. All right, if anyone else wants to get their vote onto that quickly, pop that in. All right, fantastic. Thanks for that. I won't worry too much about sharing those results. We'll get straight back into the webinar. So let's very quickly talk about owner conversations. So you just said there a couple of times that owners can definitely delay the decision. They question the cost. They can fail to see the urgency. So I think it's really important to potentially shift the view of what these compliance checks are. It's a lot of owners will see it as just a cost. It's something that the government's brought in. It's not really required, etc. But what it really is, it's about risk protection and it's about safety for your renters. So it can help with asset protection. It can reduce the liability for the owners. It can actually help with their insurance as well. And of course, it's about making it a lot safer for renters. So it's very important to make sure that that conversation is being had. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the new rental minimum standards and the energy efficiency targets that are coming in. Now, when we're talking about owners having objections to it, this is an area where you can start to add a little bit of value back to your owners. So we know and we definitely see that properties that meet these energy efficient targets, they have lower vacancy and less turnover, and they're more appealing to renters. Renters are looking for these items. So the air conditioners, for instance, especially when you're leasing a property in summer, you'll see it. You have renters coming through and saying, "Oh, has it got air conditioning?" At the open for inspection. It's something that people really, really want. So the renters are looking for it. So you can attract and retain better renters. So pitch that with your owners. Having this information, having this in your property will help us to get a better renter in your property and reduce that vacancy and turnover time. Of course, you're also increasing the property value. So you're looking at stronger sales outcomes. I'm going to show you a really good example of that in just a moment. And renters are getting more and more aware of trying to reduce their running cost of the property. So a property that has this in, you're going to potentially keep a tenant in there for a lot longer because it's cheaper for them to run it and then don't have as much day-to-day pressure. Now, this is from the energy efficient report that was released by Domain just recently. So if you want a really good example of why having all of these energy efficient requirements in your home is a benefit to your owner, have a look at some of the data on this page. So you can see each year the value of the property on the left-hand side there is increasing. So having all of these in your property means that on average, your sale price of your house would be about $118,000 more across the whole of Victoria. And for units, it's around 75. And if you actually truncate that down to just Melbourne, it's even bigger again. So right in the Melbourne metro area, we see houses that have energy efficiency selling for almost 24% above the like properties in that area that don't. So you can actually add almost up to $200,000 of value into your asset. And that's very important for owners in the long term as well. We'll actually send a link out to this. We'll pop it in the chat now so that you can have a browse through that. That energy efficiency report is really, really good. And it really drives home some of the reasons why it's a good idea for your owners to meet these requirements. And it takes away a few of the objections there from them as well. And of course, don't forget to take it back to basics as well. Like, why are these safety checks even in place? Why does compliance to this matter? It's about preventing death, injury, and serious safety incidents. That's really, really important for us to not lose sight of. They also didn't come out of nowhere. So most of the regulations were based on existing building regulations that weren't being met properly. So it's about making sure that they are being met. And it does also address some poor rental housing conditions. And there were quite a few out there. I'm sure a few of you have heard of it before, but I remember a property in Geelong. The only toilet was actually a portaloo. Thankfully, that's now not something that you can do. I wouldn't want to be living there. Okay, there are hundreds and hundreds of real world examples out there, but I've just put two in here. We often get asked here, well, why does my freestanding cooker have to have an anti-tilt device on it? So that regulation was already part of the manufacturer's installation requirements, but it wasn't being met quite a lot. And in 2014, unfortunately, a young Victorian girl received really bad burns after she stood on an open oven door, and that tilted it back, and the hot oil that was getting prepared on the cooktop actually burnt her quite severely. So that's why things like having a little anti-tilt device is really, really important. You see it the same with TVs and bookcases, etc., falling on young kids and injuring them. It's what you don't want. It also, we have incidents that come through where you do get updates to these safety checks. So, for example, in 2022, so after the regulations came in, unfortunately, a 52-year-old Victorian man tragically lost his life when trying to escape fire. And when the coroner's report was laid out, they were unable to confirm there was actually a presence of smoke alarm in the property. Now, from what I understand in reading this case, it was one of those scenarios where it depended on the lease date whether you actually needed to have the smoke alarms checked or not. After that, they put recommendations out mandating that all smoke, electrical and gas safety checks were on every property, regardless of the lease date if it was being rented. So there are examples that you can use if you really need to. When your owners are objecting to it, go back to these real world examples, have a couple of them in your arsenal so that you can say, hey, it's not just about random regulation that's coming in. There's actually reason for most of this, and it's about, reducing that risk for yourself in that space. All right. If you're getting new management or rent roll acquisitions, again, this is a really good area to lean on your provider, such as Taskforce, and ask for help to plan the next jobs out. So here at Taskforce, a few of the things that we can do. We can definitely do portfolio health checks, whether you've just taken on a rent roll or whether you just want to have a look at your current one. And I'll put a link up at the end of this so that you can request one of those as well. Every time we do one of these health checks on a portfolio, we find gaps, even with property, even with ones that we've been managing for a couple of years. So it's a really good idea to do and just to plan out kind of regularly, pop that information in. If you need support for investor information nights, we've got a number of staff here and a few people externally as well that we could get to come along and explain some of the reasoning as to why these regulations are in place, starting to pitch it from an external provider to your owners to give them a little bit more education around why these are in place, so that you're getting less objections. If you're bringing new staff in, it can be quite tough to try and onboard them yourself. So again, lean on your provider, lean on Taskforce, and ask for a little bit of support to train that new staff up in the processes you guys have internally. And don't forget about ongoing training and education. So that's partly what this webinar series is doing. If you're on it and you're enjoying the webinar series, please share it with your friends. We'll do another one probably towards the end of this month, early next month, and we'll do them quite regularly over 2026. Just invite your colleagues on, make sure that the rest of your team's jumping on. At least if they register for these, even if they can't watch them live, you'll get the link and you can watch them back. And of course, our old ones are actually up on our YouTube channel as well. So a couple of key takeouts from today. I know we've talked about a few different areas, but just 4 things that I think are really, really important. If you have the right systems in place, it will just create a smoother experience for everyone. Your owners, your renters, and your property managers will all benefit from it. So if you have that strong foundations in, it will drive better compliance. Don't forget the renter experience. A lot of people forget about the experience that the renter sees. So think about things like the communication that you're putting out to your renters, aligning the services so it reduces the impact. You can even potentially do things like the routine inspections on the same day that you've scheduled an electrical, gas and smoke alarm safety check. So they only have to be home for the one day. They don't have to be home twice. If you can line those things up, it will really, really help for your renters on their side of it. As I mentioned just before, lean on your provider. Set regular health checks in your portfolio and ask your provider to look at it and see if they can find any gaps. Maximize that linking of your CRM. So if you don't have the read and write set up with your CRM, so if we're not putting the properties, the reports directly back into Property Me or Property Tree, reach out to us and make sure we're doing that for you, because it's something that you do have to approve from your end. And once we set that up, you can get all of that information, save a lot of admin time internally. And like I've mentioned a couple of times, just reframe the owner conversations. So, these talk about the fact that meeting these regulations improves your property value and reduces your risk. Have a look at that energy efficiency report that's linked in the chat. It's an absolute goldmine of information in there. So we're going to move on to a couple of Q&As now. Thank you to one or two of you who have already popped these in. All right, so a question from Marita. Hi, Marita. It's good to see you again. So if Taskforce upload the properties, how are non-compliant properties monitored? So that's a really, really good example. Now, a really good question, sorry. Now, in the API, which is the way that we send information back in there, it doesn't give us the ability to tell your CRM whether that property does meet or does not meet the requirements. So we still unfortunately have to rely a little bit on the report in that matter. And that's why our reports have that one page at the front to show whether it's compliant. So if you do have an issue on one of those reports and it comes back as unsafe, there's a couple of different ways you can do this internally, but one of the better ways that I've seen is that you would just straight away set up a task in your CRM, which is a failed compliance task, and then you can upload the quote, the no obligation quote that comes through to that, and then you can just follow that quote through to being fixed, and then you can mark it off. Now, I can't remember if it's Property Tree or Property Me has some ability to do this. So again, that's something that might get our account managers go out and have a chat with you individually to understand your processes and have a look at that. It's an area that I think over the next 12 months, we're going to be pushing for a lot of improvement in this space, because it is one area where we're kind of seeing things get missed. Now, we mentioned our to-do list previously. On that to-do list that you get every week, it will also have any of the rectification quotes that you haven't yet approved. So that's another really good way to manage it. So you get the weekly report from Taskforce. It says you've got 5 new properties to approve or decline this week on the safety check to-do list, but then you've also got 2 properties in your rectification reports to approve. If you approve them from there, obviously we're going to go through the process, get that fixed, and send that information back to you with an update to say, here's the paperwork to say that it's been done and completed against what was failed. If you're using external trades, please decline it in that space, so it removes it from the to-do list for you. And then, like I said, probably just set up a task and put the quote that you've got from your other provider, and then just follow that through in your CRM until it's completed. I think that's probably the best way to do it. If anyone else has some other ideas on that, I'd love to hear a few different ways. It'd be fantastic to see what you guys are doing out there every day. What I find is that we're learning here at Taskforce. We're learning from our customers, from you, and we're learning internally from ways that we can do things better. And we're also learning from people like Property Me and Property Tree, who we talk to on a regular basis to try and continue to improve that experience. Alrighty, well, I have run a little bit over time today, but I hope you've got a couple of really good bits of information out of this. Like I said, if you can just take 1 or 2 things out and implement them to your own practices and your own scenario, then hopefully you'll be in a better space from today. Thank you again for joining us. We'd love some feedback on that. Please shoot us through. We'll send out an email after this, and if you do have any tips or tricks or something else that you would like to see for our next webinar, please let us know. Just for our own customers, we do have some updates coming on the to-do list over the next month. As soon as those are out, we're going to do another webinar to just give you a bit of an update on some of those changes. It's been fantastic to get the feedback that we've got over the last couple of months since that was released just before Christmas. And we're looking to make some improvements in that over this month and release them before the end of March. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you for the next one.